Hey fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications. All right, let's go to the epitome of white privilege. This, y'all got his photo, please? Y'all got the photo of the white man? Really? We'll go to it. Go, pull up the photo. If y'all want to know white privilege, if you want to look at white privilege, forget the dictionary. The photo of Paul Manafort is absolutely, positively white privilege. Pull it up, folks. This right here, that's white privilege. You're talking about a person who lied to prosecutors after he cut a deal. A guy who took millions, did not report it, who did not pay taxes on the money, who fled numerous felonies, and a federal judge sentences him to 47 months in prison and talks about how he pretty much led exemplary life up until this point. U.S. District Judge T.S. Ellis III, okay? Talk about departing. He could have faced up to 24 years in prison. Ellis said, the hell with that, dropped it to 47 months. Reporters who were in the courtroom said Ellis, from the beginning, had disdain for the special prosecutor, okay? Disdain for the federal prosecutor. This is what he said. This man worked to keep arms flowing to the Angolan general there, okay? Everybody who knows Manafort, he represented numerous dictators all across the globe. Also, bankroll the apartheid government in South Africa, the person we were just talking about. Manafort also worked with this so-called anti-communist freedom fighter, this guy planted millions of landmines in peasant fields, resulting in 15,000 amputees. Now, again, tax evasion. I bet Wesley Snipes is going, damn, just 47 months? Rather than paying his fair share to help fund national defense and public health, well, guess what? Manafort kept his cash in Cyprus, wired it to his home, about more than $1 million in clothing. Talk about an absolute corrupt individual, 47 months. Now, let's talk about Crystal Mason. This is the woman, of course, this talk about Crystal Mason, because here's what's interesting. All across social media yesterday, folks in the control room, chill, I got it. All the folks in social media, the moment Manafort was sentenced, Crystal Mason was trending on Twitter for hours yesterday. Black woman who accidentally voted gets sentenced to 5 years because she violated. 5 years. That's how nuts it is. People all across, black folks, white folks, talking about Crystal Mason. Senator Cory Booker, this is what he said on The Late Show, Stephen Colbert, reacting to the verdict.
Because this news came out about Paul Manafort, and I'm really ticked off about this. One of my friends says that we have a criminal justice system that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. And there are people from neighborhoods like mine in America who get convictions for doing things that 2 of the last 3 presidents admitted to doing. We are a nation right now that churns into our criminal justice system the most vulnerable people. In our country, we prey upon the most vulnerable citizens in our nation. Poor folks, mentally ill folks, addicted folks, and overwhelmingly black and brown folks.
Were you shocked that he only got 47
No,
months?
this criminal justice system can't surprise me anymore.
Now, Booker's talking about Vincent Winslow, a black man, homeless, hungry, agreed to sell pot to a stranger who turned out to be an undercover cop. He had 2 trials for nonviolent felonies, life in prison. We covered this story a lot. Khalif Browder, accused of stealing a backpack, accused, who never even went to trial. 3 years in Rikers Island when he finally got out. Committed suicide. 2 years of that was in solitary confinement. Talk about absolutely ridiculous. If you want to understand 2 criminal justice systems, this is it. For Paul Manafort to get 47 months in prison. I saw a tweet from Eric Holder, former Attorney General. He said it should have been 7 to 8. He said, as a former prosecutor, he said we should not be just throwing folks in jail for long terms. He said, but to go from 24 months to 47, he said it's absolutely crazy. Now, many African Americans have been talking about, again, the different sentences that are often given to African Americans who have committed crimes. Earlier, I told you about William Jefferson, the congressman from New Orleans, I spoke about him earlier, who they found $90,000 in cash in his freezer. The same judge threw him in jail for 13 years. And in fact, the original sentence actually was longer than that, and it was lowered upon appeal. Folks in Detroit right now are talking about former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, who got the maximum, 28 years for fraud and bribery. The gentleman who was his cohort in that, he got 21 years. Larry Langford, who was the mayor in Birmingham, county commissioner, also got thrown in prison for double-digit years as well. So going our panel here, the question we have to deal with is, and it's also just amazing to see how all of a sudden white folks have just realized after Manafort, Joseph, gets 47 months, oh my God, this just isn't fair about this system.
This system, oh my God, this system is screwed up.
And black folks like, hashtag, we tried to tell you.
We've been trying to tell you for years and years and years. Well, I mean, obviously, this is the most blatant example, and it's only one of many examples that people can point to. This is the one that white America mostly, for the most part, was paying attention to, because you had a guy who was accused of cohorting with Donald Trump, was accused of consorting with dictators and so forth.
But
and
no collusion. No collusion.
I mean, but the collusion was not a factor in this case.
Yeah.
Tax evasion for 10 years. Tax evasion for 10
right.
years. I mean, we're not even talking about what you know, the initial fraud case that we're talking about, where you're defrauding professional athletes for a short period of time with still a grand amount of money. Both are scoundrels. Both deserve to be punished. Why is one not being punished as harshly as the other?
But guys, let's be real clear now. I'm on board with the injustices and the inequities, right? But let's punctuate it with something. Every case is different. Every court is different. You got state court, federal court, you got different judges. It's not one judge, if you will, which is why we got the federal sentencing guidelines. It's not one judge who is making these determinations. So, you know, from a legal standpoint, we have to be careful about that. The injustices still exist. Remember one thing about the Manafort case, though, that I thought was powerful and telling. The government agreed to take no position on his sentencing despite the sentencing guidelines. So the prosecutors didn't stand up and own and tell the judge what amount of time they were asking for, which is usually unheard of unless there's a deal cut between both sides. They cut that deal, and with Ellis, who's a Reagan appointee, I've appeared before Ellis a handful of times over my legal career, as well as Amy Berman Jackson, that he's going to face next week, and they're two very different judges. But at the beginning, when he talked about no collusion, as a conservative and a Republican, that was a lead-in to how he felt about the case. And remember, 6 months ago, a year ago, he hated this case. Yeah. He blasted the prosecutors in preliminary motions about it, saying they really wanted Trump, but not him. He's free to say that, but that gave you a roadmap on where his head was, which is why the government should have stood up and said, we want 24 years, whatever it's called for under the federal sentencing guidelines.
I got Teresa Lundy, founder of TML Communications via Skype. And so let me bring in Teresa. Teresa, again, when you look at this social media reaction, black folks are saying, we tried to tell you. We knew there was this different system. And you have Rudy Giuliani, hey, what's the big deal? It's white-collar crime. This is the fundamental problem that we keep seeing in this system. Guys like Manafort, oh, it's white-collar crime. It's no big deal. It's tax evasion. You know, yeah, he lied. But those are all BS excuses.
Absolutely. So, again, the epidemic of what's going on right now is the same thing that's been going on in America for thousands of years, well, hundreds of years. And so when we look at what absolute justice actually is supposed to look like, I think we need to start looking at what the sentencing guidelines are looking like for those in the judicial court system. Because if we take a look at what some of those guidelines are, and if we started to reform and to amend some of those changes, then I think we would start to expand our reach as what it looks like for some of those best practice sentencing for white collar or criminal proceedings.
Go ahead, Fatima.
Well, I'm still struck by the fact that Crystal Manning is not a threat to our democracy. What she did by accidentally voting and not understanding that she wasn't supposed to vote does not jeopardize our country in that way. And the fact that at the same time we can compare these two sentences, I agree that but judges have a lot of discretion. And
but the federal sentencing guidelines were supposed to bring some uniformity to some of these sentences.
But I think it's highlighting the fact that you can depart,
there you go.
and that happens. And the privilege of being able to get that sort of departure when many other people do not get that sort of departure, I think is worth having a broader conversation.
And it is tied to the type of crime and the type of person. To hear this judge, well, the kind of life that you lived before, essentially, you're not a bad guy. You pretty much lived a really, really, really good life. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I can show you some black folks who never got. No, 1 second. Wait a minute, hold up, I'm not done. This is also, hold up, I'm not done. This is also a guy who walked in, who showed no remorse, who essentially said, I'm the damn victim. I mean, normally, when you getting sentenced, they tell you, and look, you need to go in, you need to show some remorse, you need to go ahead and look, don't go in there cocky, arrogant.
I didn't know that.
The judge, I'm sorry, I apologize, what happened, I hurt the people. He walked in, that's bullshit. Look, damn it, I'm the victim. I don't know why in the hell I'm here. Talk about, Teresa, the height of arrogance.
Absolutely. And actually what you were describing is participatory defense. So with criminal defense, participatory defense is pretty much that, as in the defense attorney will bring a slew of materials about who that person is. So when it comes to the judge, they start to actually see who that person is as in their character, and then they start to, render a verdict.
These cats didn't waste their time.
They did.
They were like, look, I got a white man next to me. Judge, what up? And Judge like, you right, 47 months.
He owed $25 million in black taxes, or he stole it, what have you.
And hold up. And after cutting a deal with the prosecutors, kept lying.
When I was in D.C., but remember, at sentencing, the judge can take any and everything into consideration.
He's going to get sentenced in D.C. March 13th. But the fact that the guy you said who kept lying, so it's not like I lied before y'all busted me.
I ain't gonna lie.
I got busted and my ass kept lying.
He was in it.
And the judge found that he had lied. Judge Jackson found that he had lied. It wasn't an accusation. She made a finding in an order that he had lied.
Well, which is...
Must be nice to be white.
I actually think that's going to come up next week. I guarantee.
She's going I sure hope so.
She's going to put the hurt on it. One other quick point to make
is she going to hire in 10 years next week?
The question isn't if she's going to do it. Is she going to do it consecutively or concurrently with this 4-year sentence?
Which one do we want?
Consecutive.
Well, we...
Consecutively.
Consecutively.
Hold up, I ain't talking to bougie. Which one we want, Joseph?
Yes.
We want consecutive. I know.
Listen, this is a real consideration. Given his age, if she runs it 10 years plus that 4, and by the way, on good behavior, he's going to get out in 2022, okay? His age becomes a factor. Is she giving him a life sentence or not? And that's a real factor of the federal sentencing guidelines.
Well, guess what? Shouldn't have stole the money, shouldn't have lied. You shouldn't have represented all of them.
Have you no sympathy?
No, none.
Have you no decency?
None.
To put a man in jail
no,
for the rest
I'm
of his
styling
life?
just like white people. No, none.
To the listening public, I'm just being difficult here. I want him to get as long as possible.
There's a moment you want to be white, this is the moment. No sympathy. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, calling all HBCU alumni, students, and leaders enter the Ford Motor Company HBCU Mobility Challenge and win $25,000 for your school. Building on their long-term support of HBCUs, Ford is looking to improve mobility in HBCU communities through innovative solutions. The winning program will receive a grant of up to $25,000 to implement the proposal. The deadline to apply is March 31st, 2019. Go to fgb.life, that's fgb.life for more info and to apply. Ford goes further in our community. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.